Welcome to Conflict Managed. I'm your host, Mary Brown. Conflict Managed is a weekly podcast about toxic work environments and how to fix them. We're glad you're here. Good morning, Steven, and welcome to Conflict Managed.
Thank you for having me. I hope this is one of the more entertaining and educational episodes.
Oh, I do too, and I think we're going to have a wonderful time together. You did tell me before we began that you're a little sleep deprived, given the age of your young baby.
I have a little rascal. We have a little 13-week-old. I love him to death, but haven't slept a lot in 13 weeks.
It's very hard to tell somebody what it's like to be a new parent because how do you talk about that? Work sleep deprivation is much different than when you are with a child and all that entails.
Yep, very true. So should I forget to use verbs or something? Just forgive me. Just nod and be like, oh, he's just tired.
Well, Stephen, I want to begin with asking you about the first job you ever had as a young person.
Okay, so that's an odd question in that people usually ask me about film stuff, but I'll tell you, strangely, the first job I ever had was randomly. I was in Northern Virginia, inside the Beltway around DC, and I was invited to audition for a youth news show on Channel 5, the Metro Media, the Fox channel there. There was a half-hour youth news show, and the shtick of the show was it was high schoolers who produced and put on a show on Channel 5 for other high schoolers about here's what's going on in the news you should know, right? Because this is Facebook. This is, the world was not as open as it is now where anybody can stream anything. So I did that for 69 weeks. I got chosen out of the whole cattle call of people, and it was super fun. We had a show that was 3 segments. Each segment was news stories with an interview at the end. And because we were the top rated youth show in the DC Baltimore market, we got on interesting people. Like the mayor of DC came on, Sugar Ray Leonard, who was a big boxer. Like local celebrities would come on because it was a way to be relatable to the kids. Let me tell my story to the kids because we were the top rated show for people, pre-college basically. So I did that. Super fun.
What drew you to applying for that?
You know what? My brother is a great pianist. He's now a professor of music at UVA. And he and I had performed at this outdoor concert area called Wolf Trap in Northern Virginia as part of a festival. And the talent scout had asked us to come on the show. And when I was there, the producer of the show and I had chatted. My brother's 4 years younger. So they were like, why doesn't he play the piano? And then you can do the interview with him because you're a little older. You're probably better at spoken, right? Maybe. My brother's very articulate, but okay. And so I did that. And the producer had said, if you're at all interested, you saw the way the show is done. We have 2 hosts that are graduating, going on to college. So we're going to have auditions replace them. If you want, write a couple of news stories, come in on this date, and I'll get you a time and you can do it on camera. And then, we'll choose 2 new hosts of the 4. That's what I did. My mom was like, are you sure you want to do this? And I was like, I'm not really sure, but it sounds kind of cool. So, and what's the downside? My life is exactly the way it is now. I just don't do a TV show. That's what I do now, right? And I happen to get chosen, which was kind of cool. Going out to restaurants every now and then, and other kids would be like, oh, hey, I saw you on, Channel 5. We're like, that's cool.
It's such an interesting first job because when I think about like management structure and what it's like when you show up and, it's different if you're working at the Gap or McDonald's, right? Because there's a certain amount of pressure. I didn't have a paper route.
I can't ride a bicycle and throw a paper.
Right. But there's a certain amount of pressure if because other people are counting on you to do a certain level of work. So there's that possible element. And then just the management in general. What do you recall it was like?
I think from a young age, my parents were both born in a kind of poverty that they worked very hard to make sure my brother and I never understood. So I can only extrapolate from what I've seen to understand why, when I was young, they really enforced upon us like an idea of like, go do something with your life, go be disciplined, go out there, make a name for yourself in whatever field you want. We'll give you opportunities. You choose what's interesting to you, but do something. Don't slough off. So doing the TV show, yeah, there are certain responsibilities. You had to go source your stories, write them, get them approved by the network, by the local, producer, perform them, do the whole thing, blah, blah, blah. And the show aired. Like it wasn't a flexible thing of like, oh, we went a week over on, the shooting schedule of our movie. It's like, no, man, the TV beast needs to be fed on time. And I think that worked well for me because I was of the mentality of like, oh, okay, yeah, my parents worked hard, so we have food, which they didn't always have. I can do this. Like this is not hard relative to what they lived through.
Hmm. Yeah, I think when we think about work ethic or what a person is equipped to do, it is interesting their family of origin and what they came from. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, a family has a certain kind of idea, doesn't mean that it's carried on with their progeny, right? But
True.
this job that you had, it's so self-driven, right? That you have to do it at
Mm-hmm.
this certain time, right? And it's got to be the certain level of quality. That's quite a lot for a young person because it sounds like you have a lot of autonomy because you're not being told what to do. Is that correct? But you're going out and finding the stories and writing them and then
And pitching them, and yeah, the whole thing.
the
Yeah.
whole thing.
Uh, I definitely had, I don't want to make this too much about me sounding like I'm smart or something because I'm relatively smartish, but definitely when I was young, I had a sense of, okay, I don't want to disappoint my parents. And what does that mean? That means that, okay, if we're going to play the piano, let's do it well. Or if we're going to study math, we're going to do it well. And so doing this TV show was something where I'm like, I'm not going to go on a local TV show and like embarrass my family. So every week we would have to, pitch stories to our producer. Hey, this is something I think that's relevant if you're 16 years old here, 18 years old here. I'm going to go interview this person and do it this way. And, it'll make a 90-second, bit on our show. Um, that's kind of how when I was little, I mean, my life was very, very focused. Now I have a young child. My life is chaos, but, yeah, it worked really hard. Like I got accepted to USC when I was 14 because I worked really, really, really hard when I was little to not be a screw up, you know?
So you go on to college. What did you major in?
Broadcast journalism and business.
Hmm.
I went to USC. USC had seen me on TV. They had a very strong broadcast journalism school. They said, "Oh, we've seen you're already doing this," and they were very generous with me. Said, "If you want to come here, you can come early." And I said, "Okay, let's give it a shot." So business has helped me more as I've raised a bunch of venture, I've run startups, I've run movies, stuff like that. But journalism definitely taught me how to think, how to communicate. And I appreciate the instructors I had. A lot of them were writers at the LA Times or, one of the local networks.
Hmm. So what did you think that you wanted to do when you were in college? Did you want to, be a journalist? Is that what you thought you
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to do?
Yeah, absolutely. When I went to college, I was thinking I will get out and be on the path to be, the news anchor.
Hmm.
And one of the great things about USC is a lot of your professors are actually working at the national networks. If you go to school in, I assume, Columbia, NYU, New York or LA, you have access to people who are teaching you that actually are doing it, not they know the theory of it.
Hmm.
And that was super cool because by junior year, I realized I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I had seen now that you rose up in that world because it was, hey, you kind of look good on camera. People like you read the stories, but you have very little control over what you say. A lot of the network's agenda is sort of set, as we've seen, recently
Hmm.
politically, high above you. And you're just sort of handed stuff to say and do. And I was like, wow, that's not that interesting. And that led me into a behind the camera path, which led me into film.
So tell us a little bit about your pathway through film and
Mm-hmm.
where you have ended up today.
Okay, so to make the film story somewhat succinct, I fell into film because, as I mentioned, I was going to USC, but I was not in their famed cinema TV school, arguably the best in the world, right? A lot of my friends in the dorm were aspiring Spielbergs and Lucases and Scorsese's, whatever. So you would go out to, Tuesday night late movies and go to a diner afterwards and everyone debate the movie. And it was fun, like having that exposure to it, but it was just like a social thing. And I also, and this is just a weird parallel thing, is I knew how to code because both my parents, they met because they were engineers at IBM. So, well, it's like your parents are great ice skaters. You probably learn how to ice skate when you're little. It's just part of,
Right.
it's in your family,
That's
right?
right.
We all go
Family
ice skaters.
business.
Yeah. So I knew how to code and I had won a Watson scholarship from IBM, which, in addition to giving me money for school, also guaranteed me a job if I wanted to earn money. So what I did during school was I would code for IBM as a junior software engineer and make money. Here's the weird thing that happened, because my life is a bunch of very lucky things that fell in my lap, to be blunt, right? Like the TV show. So I'm in LA. I'm going to USC. I have a bunch of friends at the cinema TV school. I've learned a lot about film this way, even though I wasn't in it. And I know how to code. And that was the moment when film went digital. I was there in Los Angeles when suddenly computers were making the audio for films. Computers were making the CG effects for films. And there was a demand for anyone who could speak both languages. They could speak creative and they could speak engineer. They could talk to a director and say, this is how I want it to look. And they could talk to an engineer and say, hey, here might be ways in which we could do that and vet their ideas. So I fell into it and my career took off because there were not a lot of people who spoke both languages. I did about 14 films, doing the digital effects and the titles and stuff like that, like True Lies and Seven and Braveheart and things like that. And then I worked with Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin on Independence Day. And I produced the digital effects for that. We happened to win the Academy Award for visual effects, which is super cool. It takes 1,400 people to do it. It's not my achievement, but to be part of that definitely helps your career. Roland Dean and I got along really well. And we started a company together to do CG effects. I ran that from when we founded it to 20, I was about 24, 25 until about 28. We got an acquisition offer from a German firm and they bought us out. It was great. Suddenly I'm 28 years old. I've sold a company. As one thinks in their 20s that you're actually smarter, more successful, and funnier and better looking than you actually are, right? So I'm having this like moment of, oh, okay, what do I want to do next? And I thought working on these films was super fun. Maybe instead of just making the digital part, I could work on the larger film, like helping get the whole film made, not just the CG part. I went off to do that, became a studio executive and the whole thing. And then really got into tech because probably around Die Hard 5, I realized that, yes, I'm a vice president at 20th Century Fox and it looks like a cool job and all that. But the reality is, I'm just shepherding remakes and sequels and prequels and mashups. Like my studio was only interested in making Die Hard 5, the fifth in the series. I was working on Wolverine 2, the Wolverine. I was working on the Independence Day sequel and just all these movies. You go, is this what I'm going to tell my friends, my kids? I'm doing like, hey, daddy's working on Ant-Man 7 because it pays the bills. But it's lucrative. And that's when I got back into tech. That's when I was like, let me go do something where I can actually determine my future. And that's what I do now. That's why started the Sukha company.
So tell us about the Sukha
This is
company.
a long story, but you asked how
I
it all became
asked,
this. So
I
I warned you,
asked.
it's a long story.
No, it was very succinct. And I'm going to get back to, I have some questions about it, but I want to know about the Sukha company. What is it and why did you start that company?
You know what? Let me tell you before I appreciate the question so much. Let me tell you about a problem that I have in the world. And maybe some people who are listening along, playing along in the car or at home can relate to this, right? So I know that there are things that I can be doing to be more in control of my day, right? And I also know I have had enough days where at 6 o'clock, I feel like, God, I've been busy all day, but there's still some big things that didn't get done. And there's that frustration of like, do I tell Laura, listen, after dinner tonight, I need to get back to work and let's not make dinner too long because I got to, even though it's with friends we like, or do I get up tomorrow at 5 in the morning and try and finish today's work tomorrow morning? Like, I hated stuff like that. And I looked at it and it's interesting because a lot of people have wrestled with this. These are not new problems, right?
Mhm.
But I was looking, what are new tools to help me with that? And that led me, thanks to a friend of mine who was asking me to co-found a company with him that was around to-do lists and task management. And I was like, I'm not passionate about that, but I'll help you with it. And in helping with it, I learned about flow states.
Mm.
And it was revelatory for me the first time I understood like the way I could be more in control of my day
Mm.
than being controlled by it by simply like understanding how to manage my brain in a certain way, you know? And I can talk if you want, we can unpack flow states a bit and talk about that
Yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So tell us what a flow state is.
Okay. So here's the deal. And by the way, I want to acknowledge all the smart things I'm going to say are because people have spent their lives researching this and we benefit from having, all of their writings and their thoughts. So big hat tip to everyone who came before. But the basis of it is this. There was a Hungarian American psychologist, this guy Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He died just almost 3 years ago now. But a couple decades ago, he said, I have a thesis that if you talk to high performers in different disciplines, like athletes and scientists and artists and writers, and you talk to them about like the concentrated states they go into when they do like the thing that makes them famous. We all know them for it. He's like, even though they're doing very different things, they talk about those periods in very similar ways. And he's kind of like, what's up with that? Like, there's something there.
Mhm.
So he did, the interviews and the research and the whole stuff. At the end of it, he wrote a book called Flow. It's the seminal work on this. It's why we call it a flow state. And he said, here's the deal. And it's sort of like, like Prometheus wanting to go up Mount Olympus and get fire and bring it down to the rest of us, right? Ooh, fire. This is helpful. He's like, I chose this word flow because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found.
Mm.
We are all on the river, paddling to move ourselves forward. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you, it magnifies your efforts, and you go further and faster. He said, that's what these high performers have figured out how to do and do it repeatably. So he said, whether you're talking about, Michael Jordan calling it being in the zone, he's like, when I'm in the zone, it's me and the ball. He's describing a state where he's so concentrated and the world falls away that it is about this activity, right?
Mhm.
And he talks about what Einstein called it and Picasso, and like all these different people referred to it in their own way. But he said, I'm going to call it flow. And it's characterized like this. And this is the end of a long spiel. So I'm going to give you the talking stick back. But he says, all of them say they lose track of time. Like
Mhm.
it's not where you're staring at the clock, wondering when's lunch. Distractions fall away. Your brain begins to just naturally like push those things away. He said, you do your best work, often in a compressed amount of time. And at the end, you can feel a sense of uplift or joy as opposed to depletion. You're not like exhausted from it. You're like, wow, that was amazing. I feel like I wrote a great blog post or I, coded a great feature or, whatever the thing is you're doing. And he wrote, and now there have been very smart people like the Kotlers and the Cals and the Nears that have done more research and writing on like, oh, okay, so what kind of music helps you get into a flow state? How do you block distractions? How do distractions work in the brain? All these kind of things. And that's what really inspired me to answer your question now. That's what inspired me to start Sukha company because I was like, I would love to have the ability every day to be in flow for a couple hours, get a ton of work done early,
Mhm.
have more time in my afternoon, and not use like 7 apps, like a music app here and a distraction blocker app here. Just have one play button. I just want a website that has one play button in the center. I click it and I start work. That's how simple I need it, or else I just won't do it. It's too much friction.
Mhm.
And that's what led me to this. That's what led me to you.
I love that. When I think about flow in my own life,
Mhm.
so I'm a writer. I've written a bunch of books, and one of the thing I love writing because I don't know what's going to happen. So I show up because I'm writing the story that I want to read. I'm
Mhm.
writing whatever it is, especially when it's nonfiction. Or sorry, when it's fiction. But reading is that wonderful thing when you look up and it's 1 in the morning, right? And
Yeah.
this great falling in. That's how I always think about it. The timelessness, you lose track. And because I have done it for so long that I have like one of those albums that I listen to. But right, it's not in today's day and age, there's so many different kind of distractions, the ping, the this, the that. There's so many things
Right.
that
They're
just
all beautifully optimized to get your attention.
yeah, to get you out, right? Because that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But to go deep, right? That's what I always think about flow as going deep.
Yes.
Um, so I do have this. sort of tangential question about the Sukha
Can I
company.
ask you a couple questions first? Because I'm so
Sure.
intrigued about it, and I don't want to move on until I ask you this. Okay.
Okay, yes.
Do you remember the first time you looked up from a flow state and you're like, what was that experience? Like, that was different than my normal grinding it out. Do you remember the first time you had that?
Hmm. I think I didn't really experience it, maybe a little bit in college, but I don't think I was a great reader I wasn't a great reader when I was young. I'm
Mm-hmm.
dyslexic, and
Nope. So am I.
it's not that I can't read. I mean, dyslexia hits people in different sorts of ways,
Uh-huh.
but I think when I got older, um, so philosophy is my background, taught philosophy for over 20 years, and it does take a certain kind of discipline to read those kinds of texts. And I think once I started, because I loved philosophy, so I had a reason to stay with it. Um, but I think I really started noticing it when I started reading fiction, because then I would look up and it would be, 12. And then it's
Yes.
like, oh, but I'm going to do one more chapter, which I knew what it meant was I was diving back down.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'd look up and it's
Right.
1:30. I'm like, oh, we got a function tomorrow.
Okay. And my other question was, you referenced there's an album you listen to. There's something. What is it? What kind of music helps you get into flow?
So there are two bands that are related.
Wow, very specific. Okay.
Yeah, Broken Bells and Phoenix. And I listen to them. They're just like as soon as they're on, their background music, and like one album is like only like 50 minutes. And it's amazing to me. Like it'll be on and then it'll stop because then it'll go to something else.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? It's
Pulls
such
you right out.
it pulls me right out. And so those two bands and there are a variety of albums, when I put those on, it just sinks me right in.
And I'm not familiar with those bands, so I'm curious. These are songs that have lyrics, or they're just instrumental.
They do have lyrics, which I think is interesting, but I have a thing about language. And so I don't always understand what I'm listening to. So
Oh wow,
the Super Bowl was just this last weekend, and
yeah,
Bad Bunny was, and
yeah.
I hadn't listened to Bad Bunny before, but I have been like on repeat, and it doesn't bother me at all that I don't. I mean, I know a few words from my high school Spanish, but I'm
There you
thinking I'm going
go.
to be
It
putting
was
that
used.
on because I mean, once I can get past, I have to listen to it enough where it just falls to the background.
Yeah.
But some things I've listened to a lot and it doesn't fall to the background. And I know that's not good writing music. It's not good thinking music for me because I'm listening to the lyrics. But on some things where I can feel it recede, then I can get into it.
Okay. This I have to tell you a story because this is fascinating. So picture yourself. You are Steven, and you're thinking to yourself, "Oh wow, there's magical flow states. I can have all these different apps to try and help me, or I just have one thing, and that one thing should have music, right?" Now, you as Steven have a bunch of friends who are film composers, right? Because you used to be a film executive for over a decade. You can call them up and say, "Hey guys, you have time on your hands. Here's the science, here are the guidelines," which for most people, maybe
Mhm.
not Mary Brown, but for most people,
Right.
are music that's 60 to 90 beats per minute, usually non-vocal. It's certain key signatures more than others. It's long melodic stretches that repeat, things like that. Like you said, things that wash over you and recede, which apparently with some kind of music, the lyrics even become part of that sort of washing effect. So you as Steven call up your friends, go, hey, so you get 1,000 hours of original music, right? Here's where it gets interesting. So I do this, put this in the app. You can choose playlists. So you want more like lo-fi beats, you want like upbeat or down tempo, or whatever, right? So you can choose playlist. So a buddy of mine, Julian, who is up in Marin, he does sound for a lot of the LucasArts, like the Star Wars games. He calls me up out of the blue. He's like, "Hey man, I just got back from Nepal." Okay, that's pretty cool. Are we there? My son, I guess, got into a very good school or whatever. He graduated high school, did well. He said, so his gift, I was like, "Where do you want to go?" And he's like, "I want to go to Nepal." So we went to Nepal. And while we were there, one day in Kathmandu, it rained so hard we couldn't go out. It was this beautiful, lush, warm rain. He said, "I had some of my recording equipment there. So I recorded it. And I got back. I don't really know what to do with it. It's a cool thing, but I can't put it in a LucasArts game." And he said, "Do you want it? I know you're starting that focus app, right? So I was like, sure, okay, for free. Let's try it out. In the middle of all the music playlists, we'll just create a playlist and quietly put it there called Himalayan Dream Rain. And it's just 2 hours of rain in Kathmandu. Can I tell you, that very quickly became our third most popular playlist.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? We have all this music that I paid all this money to my friends and like rain?
Right.
And I was like, okay, there's something to learn here, right?
Yeah.
Stephen is being taught something by the universe. So I run the platform. I know people's email addresses. So I saw some people that were listening to this a lot. And I emailed them and saying, hey, I hope this is not weird, but I'd love to talk to you and understand what's cool about rain. How does that help you get into flow?
Mhm.
A couple of people said, sure, I'll chat with them. And I'll tell you this, to be very reductive, all of their answers were, it brings me back to a period of time when I had to be inside and I was studying and it was raining.
Mm.
My grandmother raised me, and finals were always around this time in Georgia where it rained at her house and I'd be stuck inside studying. Oh, my family had a lake house and we would be on spring break. And it was so interesting that it was this, it brings my brain back to a place where I would focus.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, so it's an audio cue that way. So Stephen, being Stephen, in this case, you're me, right? So you think, oh, cool, rain does this. So I found on the internet some recordings of streams in Japan, a lake um, in Western Canada, surf in Cyprus, just interesting place around the world people recorded audio. I launched them, called them Naturescapes. Not big hits. Sometimes some people listened. It wasn't like the rain thing where I was like, wow. But here's what happened. You'll appreciate this. There is I'm not going to name her, but she's a pretty well known blogger in our platform just outside London. He reached out to me. She said, I noticed you're launching these non music playlists. I have a request if that's cool. And I was like, sure, what? She said, I had a baby during the pandemic. I used to always go write my blog in this coffee shop. I can't really go in there and be the cool writer with like the 1 year old strapped to me. You know what I mean? Like, so any chance you would like put up a coffee shop that I could listen to? Sure. Okay, cool. Searched around. There's a guy in Vienna, Austria, who recorded his local coffee shop. For what reason, I don't really know. But the little sounds the espresso mean, like, shh,
Sure.
and
Yeah. I
the
I
little,
can hear it
the,
right now. Yeah.
yeah, the little plates clattering and that sort of thing, which is very much like that writer's like, I'm here writing in the cafe in Paris, whatever sort of thing. We threw it up there again, super popular, especially with writers. Not with, we have a bunch of engineers, we have designers, we have writers. Those are our big groups that are in our community. With the writers, the coffee shop became really popular. And I was like, wow, this is such an interesting lesson. I didn't know I would be taught about how we start to associate
Hmm.
this environment with how I get into flow. And
Hmm.
now we're really proud to offer a bunch of those things because you're like, hey, man, we're not rigidly saying the science says you must listen to 60 to 90 beats per minute. We're more like, choose your own adventure, figure out what
Hmm.
works, and it's there. Anyway, long story, but I had to bring that when you talked about the lyrics and all that because I was like, 5 years ago, I would have been like, no, you can't do that. And now I'm like, oh, okay. So I learned something on Mary's pod today. Okay, cool.
I'm wondering about this intersection about finding flow
Hmm?
and dealing with conflict at work.
Yeah. So,
So
okay,
before
you go.
before we get there,
Yeah.
I want to hear about your conflict journey, how you dealt with conflict as a young person,
Mhm.
versus maybe how you deal with it now at work.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I remember when I crossed over from I view myself as a worker bee and I just kind of have to be like a servant to the system sort of thing, right?
Mhm.
And the point in time where I was like, oh, okay, so the way in which where I choose to work, the way in which I show up at work, and all this are kind of my way of voting for what should work be like. You know,
Mhm.
like when we were doing visual effects, there was sort of a grinded out culture.
Mhm.
And it's weird because sometimes people would stay there longer than they had to, just in a performative way of like, well, if you're not here at 2 a.m., and it led to people being cranky and having
Mhm.
fights and just being grumpy about stuff and like, oh, the shot didn't get approved because you didn't do the thing. It was an unpleasant experience in many ways, period. I, when I left Fox and I went to start my own company again, that was for me very much a okay, I want to see how well I can create culture that respects it measures work by the output, the effect of what you did,
Mhm.
as opposed to where you did it, how many hours you spent doing it, how performative you were in doing it. So, if you were to say to me, hey, Steven, you know what? I wrote, we wanted a great blog post about so and so. I wrote it. It took me 4 minutes. I just was inspired. I wrote it at the beach yesterday, as opposed to like, oh, I was up all night slaving over this, writing 17 revisions. I haven't slept. I learned not to care. If you could do that at the beach in 4 minutes, more power to you, because guess what?
Mhm.
That's going to lead to less burnout down the road. I know you did a great episode with, I don't remember her name, talking about burnout and stuff. The ones about going to Spain and the internship and all that was fantastic. But that to me was a big, oh, okay, I need to rethink how I create environments that are either like conflict sort of burdened or conflict free, because suddenly it becomes about what's the effect of what you did, not
Mhm.
how well did you look in your peers' eyes about how hard you're working and need a pat on the head sort of stuff.
Yeah, the way that we set up the culture has everything to do with are we baking in
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary conflict? We're going to have it. Conflict isn't the problem. Conflict is
Yeah,
good because if everybody is saying the same thing, that's problematic. I mean, how we're going to innovate, get new ideas, hear when
true.
something isn't really working. So we do need conflict, but the unnecessary conflict that comes from a rigid structure or a structure that doesn't work for the people that are there, that's not getting the results that you want. And I think with what you're doing with flow, this idea of helping people really concentrate,
Mm-hmm.
the amount, it's this idea of butts and seats for 40 to 80 hours a week is a really old idea,
Yeah,
depending on the kind of work that you're doing. Now, if you're sitting at the front desk or you're answering the phone that needs to be in a certain location, well, then some jobs, of course, if you are working at a
agreed.
restaurant, right? But
I would like my doctor to be there during surgery, not remotely from the beach.
That's right. That's right. And so, of course, some jobs are very physical, hands-on, and or even parts of jobs are like that. But we get this sort of performativeness as you're talking about, which then people end up resenting, and then it leads to these really sort of odd dynamics. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if we
Yeah,
want to, we're going to have enough conflict as there is because people have different
agreed.
personalities, and some people have young babies, and then when the sleep goes
Oh,
away,
you
right?
had to go there, didn't you?
We have all these different sorts of joys and traumas that happen in our life, and then we show up for work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have conflict. It's just going to happen. But if we can set a structure that takes away the unnecessary stuff and then a path forward to deal with the people stuff that happens, because
Yep.
management, leadership, a lot of it is how do I really deal with this person or people that are having an issue, or how do I empower them? So, what about your leadership style in these different positions you've been in that you have conflict?
Here's what you just said, I think brings up a kind of foundational idea. And this will explain a lot about how I view this, especially how I view this now as opposed to like my 20s.
Mhm.
So I was very focused in my 20s on, okay, we have to deliver this movie, this visual effects, this thing, whatever. Da, da, da. We all have to grind it out, do this. It's just the culture of what we do. And I look at leadership different now. And I don't mean management. Management, I think, is more the, hey, Friday at 10 a.m., I really need your TPS report on my desk. Like you're a manager, right? Fill out your time cards. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about leadership.
Mhm.
And I think leadership begins with hiring. I think if you
Mhm.
are a great leader, you do two things very clearly up front. You articulate a mission. Hey, man, we are here to cure cancer. We are here to build affordable housing. We are here to make great romantic comedies, like whatever it may be, right? And you establish the values, which really are how do we treat each other, how do
Mhm.
we treat our customers, and how do we treat our competitors?
Mhm.
And that really states like who are we as a value aligned organization. If you do those two things well, we are here to cure cancer and we're going to be operating this way, you attract people who are more coherent to that. They're cut of a certain cloth. Then if you do the thing going, hey man, I know Mary's had like 6 jobs in 7 years and she looks like she surfs Indeed and LinkedIn jobs a lot, but she really has great skills for this job. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be the right hire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an idiot to hire you because you're just job hop. You're not engaged in the values. You're not engaged in the mission of the company. So let me say foundationally, I think that's really important. Now, here's the part I want to build to, which is if you are saying, okay, as a leader, I have a thesis. I have a thesis that everyone has something great inside them. And the question of their lifetime is, will they release it or not? And a lot of people go to their graves with that great idea inside them, whether it is idea for a restaurant, the great American novel, some app, a movie, whatever. A lot of them die with it inside. And I think that's a tragedy. Graveyards are, full of greatness. If you as leaders say, I believe that, like that is my thesis, then you really look at your team and you say, well, my job here is to elicit out of you the thing that you hold inside, right? To help you release your, I will give you the tools. I'll give you the feedback, positive and negative, and sometimes kick you in the butt, or sometimes, encourage you, whatever. But you are here on this team because you are going to write the marketing copy that turns people's heads. It'd be one of those ads that people in Ad Week read about next year. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have that greatness. I'm here to help you release it. I'm not here to beat it out of you and grind it out of you. Same thing if you're talking about, oh, this restaurant or this, whatever that thing is. So I think that's the biggest change for me is now I view it as, hey, I'm going to assemble a team that has the greatness we need. My job is simply to give them the tools and the encouragement and sometimes the criticism that lets them release it, not die with it inside.
I love that. And as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, well, what is that? Is that a kind of optimism about the human spirit? Is it if you think about aligning what you've just said about human
Mm-hmm.
persons with the vision, the mission of the organization,
Yeah.
um, where when we see the opposite, the micromanager,
Mm-hmm.
if I have to, have watch how many times your mouse is moving to make sure that you're there,
Oh
right?
my
And that
God.
this,
Right?
right?
Is that insane?
It's so,
That's
or
a
the whole,
metric.
and the whole surveillance culture, or there's just so many different sorts of things I could talk about that just drive me
Right.
crazy
A
about
dark rabbit hole.
numbers.
Let's not go
Yes,
down
that's
that
right.
rabbit hole. Okay. Okay.
But so what is that? What is that about? Is that a belief in human nature? Is that a belief about certain people that then enables the leader to really trust and see this partnership? Or is it a clarity about the mission?
You know what? I'm going to tell you a story that will, I think, explain this better than I can explain it directly about how I view this, which is Reagan, who, had his positives and negatives,
Mhm.
but universally acknowledged as a great communicator. He, for whatever you believe about his politics, he was very good at bringing people together, understanding them, getting them to, buy into his mission. I remember there was some interview that I saw with him where back when he was president, someone had asked him, like, you're this amazing, bringer together of people. Like, how do you do it? Like, how do you understand what will bring someone around your viewpoint? Like, do you view people as generally good people who sometimes are evil, or evil people sometimes are good? And are you an optimist? And he said this, which I thought was a really great way of summing up what I actually feel. He said, I don't think people are inherently good or evil. He said, I think everyone has a glass of water. And if you can understand how full they perceive their glass, not how full it is to you, someone may have a glass that's full almost to the top, but
Mhm.
they see scarcity. They see, there's
Mhm.
another ounce missing. Someone may have an ounce, but they see abundance, right? He said,
Mhm.
if you can understand how they perceive their glass, you can understand how to talk to them. You can relate to them. That's how I view people.
Mhm.
And so I see it sort of the same way is you may bring a designer on who's like, there's a designer I just worked with recently, and I knew that she had been fired from her last job for this particular reason. We talked about it. And I knew she was carrying a wound around that I was like, I don't think it's deserved. I think, sometimes people get fired for the right or the wrong reason, whatever. Like, I'm not part of that conversation, but I want to see what I can do because I see you're perceiving, you are looking for that wound to either be confirmed that you are actually guilty of that or sort of cured of that. And I said, I just don't want that to be part of how we operate here. Like, we're going to do this together. There's no reference to your past. I've seen your portfolio. I know you can do this and you do it really well. And that to me was more important than trying to figure out, all the weird spin on the ball. It's just simply, hey, you right now are coming from this place. You're going to go to this other place as we do this together, and it will feel better. And you'll perceive more abundance, more water in your glass. And that's really nice. I'm sure we'll work together again. It was a short term sort of thing, but it's again just that thing about like stepping out of your own shoes and realizing that everyone is starring in a movie about themselves. They're not starring in a movie about you,
Right.
you know?
Right. That is really lovely because I was thinking over what I have heard from 200 people episodes,
Ooh,
right? I've listened to
wow.
people and their stories of when they were at some point in their career and being seen and being empowered. And it's a lot of what you were saying is that when we think about communication, it's not what I'm trying to tell you, it's what is the other person hearing, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
we have to ask ourselves, what can they hear right now? What are they in a position to hear? What is going on with them. And so I'm trying to understand them. So there's that part. And the other part that I hear about so much about when people talk about really good work environments, it's this idea of being empowered. And what is being empowered is I chose you, I see you, you've got this, and I'm here to help in whatever I need to help you with, but go ahead, do it. And those things, it's just when we think about humans, right? We're all human persons and we're all different. I'm an individualist. We're all different, but we have these sort of common things that really seem to work time and time again
Yeah.
to have healthy work environments, to help people be their best selves for themselves, for their department, for their
Mm-hmm.
organization, for their community. And and what I see getting in people's way, it seems to be what you have been saying is people get in their own way, like their perception, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perception is reality, what I perceive in my glass, and therefore what I perceive as my
Correct.
limits.
Yes.
Another thing I see is that your perception and my perception, when we're working together and there's conflict, right? I spin a particular narrative about why you're saying, why you're doing what you're doing, and then I get caught. And so I wonder
Mm-hmm.
if what the Sukha company is up to in this idea of flow state, how that might help people to stop and breathe, to really think about what's going on if they're caught in a conflict.
Okay. Let's talk about that for a moment, which is in the work, if we want to create a workplace culture of, let's say, more positivity than negativity, and there's always some negativity. Sometimes you don't win the deal and you're
Sure.
frustrated about it. So it's not like we're not Pollyannas here, but
Right.
more positivity. And we're all aiming to do something of value. I think so. The people listening to this definitely are. Then how do you move from having a workplace culture of like the reporting thing where I've been in too many stand-ups where it's like, well, everybody, this is what I did yesterday. This is what I'm working on today. I'm not blocked. Okay, Murray, your turn. Well, yesterday I made 100 outbound calls and whatever it is. It's just like no billion-dollar company was built that way. It's
Mhm.
just not, right?
Mhm.
You want to have the meeting where someone comes in and they go, you know what? Yesterday I took an hour. I went for a walk at the beach and I thought deeply about that feature our competitors launched last week. And I found the hole in the armor. This is this is what we could build to sort of lapse them. And everyone's heads in the meeting kind of like pivot over and they go, oh my God, we should like leave the meeting now and go build that. And
Right.
that's how billion-dollar companies, that's how teams win because they have that
Mhm.
mentality of like, that's an amazing, that is like, that's deep work. That's
Yeah.
not, well, I checked off my 100 calls to make. So I did all my Slack messages are returned. No company wins because their Slack messages returned. And that means you can't have the culture of like, can you believe Mary went to the beach for an hour and like walk. I'd like to have that life,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, let's go build that thing that Mary brought up. That's awesome. Right. And again, it's about work should be measured by the effect of your actions, not on where you did them, how long they took you to do them, that sort of thing. And that I think leads to more positivity on teams. Not like everything's gonna be perfect. Again,
Hmm.
not everything's gonna be perfect. But when you start winning, when you start having that kind of growth and success, it fosters a better culture. At some point, people might get inflated egos. We can talk about how that goes, but it's way better than having the thing of like, oh my God, we just keep having these stand ups. Everyone says the same thing and we're at each other's throats. And,
Hmm. Yeah.
what were you going to say?
Yeah.
I saw you were going to say something a moment ago. What
No,
was it?
no, I was just thinking, if we want innovation, we want creativity, we
Hmm.
want people to be happy and healthy, whatever kind of job they're doing, if we have to think more about creativity, like what is that? How does it come about? And of
Yeah.
course, creativity isn't just for the arts, not just for filmmaking, but
Thank you for
in
saying that.
in
Yes.
all, if you are a receptionist at a dentist office and you need time to think, like, when do ideas come about? Most of my great ideas come about not when I'm sitting in this office, when I'm out doing something else and it's ruminating in the back and then it comes to the fore.
Ooh. Ooh. May I tell you a story? Because
Please.
you touched on something that I love. Okay. So this is one of those valuable things I learned early in my film career. So I'm getting out of USC, starting to work in film a little bit. And my job at this moment in time, my exact job was I worked at an ad agency that did trailers for movies and commercials for movies, things like that, right? And my job there was we would get movies in that we'd been assigned by the studio, and I would delegate that to, I'd assign a writer producer, say, hey, we just got this rough cut of a Will Ferrell comedy for next summer from Sony. Go watch it, write a trailer, we'll send it to Sony, we'll go back and forth, right? So that's my job, sort of air traffic control, who gets what movies. The company's owned by these two very smart guys, very well respected, promo ad guys in Hollywood. It's like Mad Men kind of guys, right? In their 30s, I want to say. And I'm like 20. And one of them, Jeff, comes to my office. For the purposes of this story, he calls me Stevie. He's the only person in my life who calls me Stevie. He does it this day. We're still friends. So he comes to my office and he goes, Stevie, do you know Bart? And I was like, there's a guy in the vault named Bart. I've met him. Yeah. Seems nice. Why? He goes, you ever give Bart a movie, a trailer to write? And I was like, no. Are we talking Bart, the guy who gets coffee and like drives tapes around Hollywood stuff? No, I have not. He goes, I have an instinct about him, Stevie. See if you can give him something. I'm like, hey man, your name's on the door. You have the big reputation. Like, who am I? So I found some Warner Brothers B title that had like a month deadline on it. So if he comes back after a week, he's like, I hate this. I want to do this. I can give it to a pro. They'll knock it out overnight. So Jeff comes to my office 2 days later. Stevie, how's Bart doing? I'm like, Jeff, I gave him that movie like 2 nights ago. Like, I'm not going to bug him. Like, oh, let me wait until Monday. Give him the weekend. Okay. Okay, fine. Well, what else did you give him? He's never written a trailer before, Jeff. I gave him one movie. Like, what are you thinking? He's like, Stevie, let me explain to you how creativity works. It is never about the thing you're thinking about. If you give him one movie, he's going to stare at that with little beads of sweat coming down his temples, and he's going to write the most B version of that trailer ever. You have to give him something else to think about because the part of your brain that does, I don't know, chocolate and peanut butter, what would those be like together? It's not the part that you think with. And
Mhm.
can I tell you, through my film career and now my tech career, how many times I've seen Jeff proven correct about exactly that. And there is a book on the neuroscience of it called The Net and the Butterfly, about like catching ideas, by Olivia Fox and Judah Pollock. And it talks about how from birth we have this like default mode network, which is kind of like the little child in the room, like looking around at stuff. And then you develop that executive mode network in your brain, which executes action. I have to do the laundry. I got to get to work by 9, whatever. Right. And it is true, exactly what you said. It's only when the executive mode network is busy doing something
Mhm.
that the default mode network gets to play. Like the child's unsupervised, and it can be like, oh, I don't know. What does a cell phone taste like? Like stuff the executive mode network would never do, right?
Right.
And if you've noticed, I've exact same thing as you. The way you have those ideas, those weird ideas about the blog post you should write, the thing you should do
Hmm.
while you're driving,
Yeah.
showering, out and about, walking, doing something else, because your default mode network is like, okay, cool. No one's watching. They're all busy. What if, and that's, yeah, I hope people, if they get nothing from this, I hope that is something they start to develop going like, oh, I really need some inspiration. Let me go for a walk as opposed to let me stare at my laptop screen waiting.
Nothing's appearing.
No, you were talking
Yeah.
about conflict in the workplace. Oh my God,
Yeah.
inner conflict. I need to do this thing, right? I must be inspired. In 3, 2, 1, where's the inspiration? Oh, I hate myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've been driving or walking and I have to pull over
Bingo.
or,
There you go.
make a voice note. And that's when it strikes. It
Yep,
strikes when
Mary,
it
totally
strikes.
with you. Yep.
But I think a lot of creativity is being open, right? So
Yes.
being open and looking around and trusting yourself that it's okay if it's not happening on command. And why should you think that it would happen on command?
Yep.
And I think when we think about dealing with conflict, interpersonal issues at work, I
Mhm.
it's also being open that there are solutions. It's being open to not just listening to your brain, and your brain is saying the one solution is they need to be fired. They need to be taken out into the public square and be shamed for their bad behavior, and they need to get
Wow.
on their knees and
This
apologize.
podcast took a dark turn. Keep going. Keep going. Okay. I'm waiting for the public stoning. Let's go.
That's right. That's what we want when we feel like when some injustices happen to us. And we shut down our creative ability to shut down, our ability to really be curious about our
Mhm.
story. But
Yeah.
curiosity is the thing that we need to have healthy work environments. It's the thing that we need to get unstuck when it comes to conflict, because conflict shuts us down and we
I,
don't see anymore.
I will add to that.
Yes.
And this is because you were talking about creativity.
Hmm.
I agree with you on curiosity is amazing, like curative. It's like sunshine in the Justice Brandeis sort of quote. I would add to it there's an egoless approach to creativity. And I don't remember things from 10, 20 years ago this vividly. Every now and then there's that thing that happened. I'll tell you this, I remember vividly, which is when I went to DreamWorks and I had made it, I think, to executive vice president at Kurtz Minority at DreamWorks. And there was a project I brought in that Steven Spielberg took a personal interest in. And it was the first meeting I had in his private little conference room off his office in the Amblin compound, the beautiful Southwest Adobe, Jurassic Park thing that he built at Universal. So I remember thinking, I've been in so many meetings with so many people, but I'm just gonna say it, like there was something about like, whoa, I'm here, like I've made it. Like I'm sitting at a table with Stacy Snyder, the chairman of the studio, the president of DreamWorks, one or two other executives there, the writers next to me, Alex and Bob, who's like, I'm at a table with like 9 people with Steven Spielberg debating story. Like, how did this happen? How did I get this lucky? Right. Okay. So here's now with that context, here's what I noticed. And out of respect to Steven, I'm going to change the details of this a little bit. The story is true, but like, so you can't figure exactly what I'm talking about. Right. So we were debating something where there's an alien in the story. And Steven said something like, okay, so this scene is where the alien needs to like come through the wall, and then there's the water, and realize the water is going to kill it, sort of thing. Right? And okay, everyone sort of is like, oh, Steven Spielberg, sort of like the writers are jotting down notes. It's like, okay, cool. And within about a minute, there was someone coming through the room that I'm going to call the coffee boy, right? Someone who's not technically part of this meeting, and chimed in and said, "Oh, I feel like we saw the alien through the wall water thing last year in this thing. Um, I don't know. What if it were this other thing?" And I thought to myself, "Oh my God! I mean, it's the last time we see Coffee Boy alive. he'll be found in the dumpster out back. Like you contradicted Steven Spielberg in his own story meeting. Like, so cute. I wonder if you get dismembered before they kill you or after. I don't know. Um, and Steven, without missing a beat, was just like, oh, yeah, that's better. We should do that. And the meeting moved on as if nothing had happened. And I was like, oh, that's what it looks like when you're that confident and you can be egoless. You're like, it's not about my idea wins, it's best idea wins.
Mhm.
And it's really hard, especially when I noticed working with more the mid-level, like the mediocre writers and producers, where it's very possessive.
Mhm.
I absolutely like love my idea. It has to be this way. And I work on it in my own life. There are times, even developing Sukha, the website, where I'm talking to Tony, my partner in this, and I stop myself and I go, okay, am I insisting the feature has to look this way because it's the best idea, or it's because how I envisioned it?
Mhm.
And man, conflict starts to go away when everyone recognizes that we're all trying to get the best idea. We're not trying to defend like it has to be my way. I
Mhm.
like blue, therefore it shall be blue. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, that was a big Jeff lesson, Steven Spielberg lesson. There you go.
Mm. I love it. It sounds like being in flow state with somebody else, right? When you are really trying to achieve, you know what the goal is that you're trying to achieve,
Yep.
right? And so you use this curiosity and generosity to get to the same goal, right? And this is what I
Mm-hmm.
love about dialogue. A dialogue is not me talking at you, but it's you and me together for the third way, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I've got
Yeah.
fabulous ideas and so do you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an annihilation of the self, but if we're trying to achieve this thing and we recognize that it's going to be better when we have more ideas and that and really opening to that. But yeah, so this idea of ego is really interesting and what role it plays. Like sometimes we want to defend, like, am I defending myself or an idea and why am I
It's
defending it?
spot
Or
on, Mary. That's exactly right. And once you can make that, and I'm not saying I'm a guru, I'm great at this, but I do recognize it sometimes when I'm doing that. Is once you recognize that, man, it helps. I hope
Mhm.
people go back and listen to the last thing you said.
Well, I can't believe our time is coming to an end. So I'm going
Wow,
to
this flew
ask
by.
you my ending question. So when
Ooh,
you look into the
yeah.
future of work, so
Uh-huh.
imagine your baby is out in the workforce. So the
Oh my
future of
God.
work is it's a ways off, but um, what do you want? What do you think needs to happen in the world of work so that not only will all people be treated with dignity and respect, but that they'll be encouraged to thrive and flourish?
Because now everybody's talking about how large language models are changing work, right? Whether you're coding or you're writing prose or whatever, right? Or doing accounting. So in this moment where there's a big debate around what will work look like in 2 years, and will we all be, the people in Wall-E just like floating around, like watching entertainment while bots do all the work? It's such an interesting question about how do you create that kind of culture. I can answer as best as I can, and I know that I'll listen to this in a year and laugh at how stupid I sound. So with that preamble, let me just say this, which is I do think that regardless of what that split is between AI, which people often just conflate LLMs with being all of AI, but I'm going to say AI, which really mean LLMs, um, without knowing how that split is going to settle, right?
Mhm.
And whether we move on to some other world model or some other way of having assistance in working, there is absolutely something that we as humans want in terms of validation of like our efforts, our output into the world is received and we are given positivity around it, right?
Mhm.
So whether that means that there's a certain portion of work tasks that people do now that will be the only thing we are left doing, or all of our tasks will change a certain percentage. I certainly hope that whoever is leading these organizations, whoever, arises to that point of saying, I am responsible for the culture here, says, I recognize that people need validation. They can't be putting their efforts into a black hole and then eventually burn out. That there is a way of recognizing people and guiding people back onto the path. There have been times in my career, like I've been fired twice over the years, and both times there were a great wake up call of like, okay, so how do I learn from that? And
Mhm.
it's just that thing that I think is self reinforcing. Once you have a cycle of you're working, you get notes, you get better, you get validation. The movie gets made, the app gets released, whatever. that continues no matter what that split is with
Mm.
us and the LLMs doing work for us.
Mm. I think that's very elegantly said. Validation. It's so human,
Mhm.
right? So if
Yeah.
if we're going to have humans and work with humans at work, whatever the humans are going to
Or
be
however that
doing,
looks. Yeah.
humans are going to human, right? And so
Yep.
we want certain sorts of things. And I think
Mhm.
the more we think about what is human nature, what is that, not to manipulate it, but to honor it and to make workplaces fit for
Yeah.
humans, right? We're still
Yeah.
suffering from industrial revolution. We're still suffering from the infantilization of work culture. But if we're going to be working with a bunch of adults,
Mhm.
what does that look like? And I think that word validation is so lovely. I mean, there's so much in there. I'm going to think more about that.
I
That's
appreciate
great.
your
A
saying that.
wonderful way to end this podcast. Well,
There we
Stephen,
go.
thank
I
you
hope this has
so
been
much.
helpful for those listening.
Yes, I've really enjoyed it, and I know that others are going to as well. So thank you so much for being on Conflict Managed, and I wish you the best, and I hope lots of sleep is in your future.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who listened.
Stephen, my goodness, what a wonderful conversation. I'm just really interested in your company and the Sukha company and this idea of really helping to eliminate these unnecessary distractions. Technology should always be there to help us. It serves us, we don't serve it. And when we find ourselves constantly distracted from doing the things that we want to do, well, what are we supposed to do about it? So, dear listener, I hope that you go out and if you just go out to look at at his website and what it's about to see if it can really help you to do the things that it is that you want to do. Conflict Managed is produced by third-party workplace conflict restoration services and hosted by me, Mary Brown. You can find us online at 3pconflictrestoration.com. Come back, we have new episodes every Tuesday. And if you haven't had a chance to check out my latest book, How to Be Unprofessional at Work, Tips to Ensure Failure, that is not my latest book. That was my book before. My goodness, I am distracted. I need to go out on this website and become less distracted. My latest book is Winning the Generation Wars at Work, Making Your Age an Asset. And it is about how do I work with that person, that older person, that younger person, that person in the middle that's driving me crazy? How do we move past those tired narratives so that we can have healthy work environments and work well with our colleagues? Our music is courtesy of Jeff Pilot, and remember, conflict is normal and expected. Let's deal with it. Until next time, take care.